Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Harebrained Games. Today we're going to take a look at A Gest of Robin Hood. Does that make me a Gest speaker? It might. A Gest of Robin Hood is a specifically two-player game in the Coin/ICS series from GMT. It features Robin Hood, it features Merryman, it features Nottingham, it features all kinds of stuff, and the art, exquisite. Let's take a look. Okay, let's take a look at what comes inside A Gest of Robin Hood. What should we ingest from the contents of the box? Well, you get the mounted map board, which is a somewhat smaller size than your average coin game, maybe other than Falling Sky. But this isn't a coin game. This is the Irregular Conflict series, brought to you by Metamucil. So what we have here is a typical map divided into regions. Regions have borders. Some borders are rivers, some borders are not. Bridges and etc. Not Jeff, just regular bridges. You also get each of the two sides gets their own special placard telling them the things they can do. Very typical of the series. Interestingly enough, you have setup and an opening strategy on the back that's actually quite informative. This is good idea. Actually really impressed with that. You get your standard components for different pieces. Here's Robin Hood and his merry men. They're in green tights. You get special dice, cylinders, coinage. This is the money. So I can show you the money. Then this is the side for our friend, the Sheriff of Nottingham, or not our friend, same thing. Plots and deeds. And then on the back side is a setup and then a strategy guide. You have cards, and these are larger size cards by which you'll comport the deck, and this is the deck, the songs or ballads, or they have a name for them that's very elaborate. But yeah, you'll have cards here that tell you each turn what to do. Each player gets a hiding sheet, a visor to hide them or advise them on how to hide them, with some interesting information for you as you go through gameplay. Unlike other coin games, there's quite a bit more in regards to hidden information here, and so that's going to be different than your typical Coin/Irregular Conflict series games that we've seen thus far. And then you get 3 different rule books. You get Learn to Play, Playbook, and Rules of Play. Each one does a different thing. Obviously, the rules do the rules. The Playbook is surprisingly more like an informational ballads. That's what they're called. An informational breakdown of each of the cards, background information on how the game was developed and built, and background information on Robin Hood and some of the stories and myths and such. Learn to Play is your, hey, let me show you all the things you need to know quickly and then run you through an example of play. Really well done. And that's it. That's what comes in A Gest of Robin Hood. Now let's talk about how you play it. We have here the startup scenario for this game, and in coin games or Irregular Conflict series, the objective of the game is to win. Victory conditions are different per side under most circumstances. In this case, it's a tug-of-war. You have a track, and if at any time over the course of play, during a particular royal inspection, at certain points or not, if you are towards order, then the Sheriff of Nottingham wins if you're in this area. If you're over here in justice, then Robin Hood wins. If it's any point in between, you keep playing, and you're going to be moving this back and forth through card play and a variety of other means. At the start of the game, you have the Nottingham troops, the henchmen for the sheriff, which are located around these areas. Nottingham is always there for the sheriff. That's just the way it goes in the lore. And then you've got each of these regions are either under submission to the sheriff, in other words, they're allied with him or at least passive to him, or they're in revolt, which means that they don't like him and he's going to have to lay down the revolt. Revolt is advantageous to Robin Hood, submission is advantageous to the Sheriff of Nottingham. What you're going to do, and I'm not going to do a full playthrough, I'm basically going to give you an idea of how the game goes. During your turn, a card is going to be drawn. Now, I've already pre-built the inspection deck, and what's going to happen is I flip it over, and we have an event. Now, you can use this event or you cannot. What's interesting here is that you can take your one of 3 actions when it's your turn. You can either do a single plot that basically says take one of these actions based on your side. Sheriff or Robin Hood always starts first, and you're going to take either a single plot, which means I'm going to take one of these actions and I'm going to use them on the board somewhere in a single location. Why would you do that instead of an event or plots or deeds? Well, if you don't like the event, if it isn't that cool to you in the moment, if you don't want to do an entire plot and deed, or you can't afford it, then you can do it. You can place a single plot action here. What it does mean is that at the end of this card on the next turn, you get first dibs at whatever happens afterwards. So it can be a delaying action where you do something significant, but not necessarily something widely or powerfully significant, and then you get dibs on whatever comes up next for the event. So that's why you would pick these different choices. You can also pass and get money. Robin Hood always just gets one coin, but the sheriff can actually, based on where he places his location, can get different coinage, because you are going to have to pay to fuel some of these plots and deeds and actions going on. Why don't we get started? So we picked Yemen Revolt, and in this case we can if Robin Hood wants to take the event, what's going to happen is they can choose which of these to do. This is usually benefits Robin Hood. This benefits the sheriff. So in this case, set a parish, and these are parishes, these corner boxes here, without henchmen to revolting, and shift one step towards justice. Well, that's pretty powerful. If you do that, you make it easier to be able to build out in that regard. So let's do that event. Yay! And then, yeah, revolt suppressed. So I can set a parish without henchmen to revolting. Ugh, it's so revolting. And then shift towards justice. Now it's on my side. Robin Hood wants justice. The Sheriff of Nottingham wants order. Yay! So this event is done. Had the sheriff had any carriages out, and he doesn't have any carriages out yet, they would be required to move from wherever they start towards Nottingham. They can be intercepted and robbed by Robin Hood, or if they make it here to Nottingham, they're going to give money or bonuses to the sheriff. So it's another point of contention for the two different sides. Now it's up to the sheriff, and the sheriff decides, you know what, I'm going to do something amazing. I'm going to do a plot and a deed. Now notice here, and it's very simple with this game over, say, coin games. Some of them get some really elaborate choices when it comes to the decision tree. Here, it's intentionally kept very light. Almost everything is up to 3 locations. So whenever you see something, it's almost always up to 3 locations or spaces, which makes it easier. So in this case, I can hire, and for 2 shillings per space I choose, I can hire henchmen and place them in submissive parishes, or henchmen, put 4 of them here. Or if there is a revolting parish, and the more henchmen than merrymen, but at least one, then I can switch it back to passive. This is good, because at the end, at a scoring round, you're going to get money if you have, and you're going to move the track here if at a certain point, like timing points in the game, you have a certain number of submissive parishes. You don't want to have the whole place in revolt. You're gonna basically cause Robin Hood to be a hero. You don't want that as the sheriff. So in this case, we're going to do hire 2 shillings per space. So we're going to spend 6 shillings, and we're going to pick 3 different spaces. Say here, here, and here. Okay, and then we can place up to 2 here, place up to 2 here. Look at that, we're filling the countryside, and up to 4 in Nottingham. Now that's cool, because now we've got a nice big group of henchmen that we're going to be able to go out and pound around. It cost us 6 coins, so we're a little low on coins, but that's okay. And because we did a plot and a deed, not only do we get our main action, which can be hire or patrol. If we wanted to basically choose destination spaces, we could move a particular group of henchmen into a space and then reveal the Robin Hood's merrymen, which is great, because while they're hidden, they're very difficult to capture. But if they're revealed, in other words, flipped face up, then they're easier to capture in a subsequent turn. And then, well, here it is, capture. So if we have 3 spaces with henchmen, we can remove exposed enemies based on that and send them to prison. Now, they're not in prison all the time. They don't last forever. You can bring them back over time at certain points when there's inspection times, but they are often out of play, and there's a finite number of resources, so you're not always going to be able to just keep adding merrymen. That just, yeah. Yep. So anyway, and then deeds. These are extra little special bonuses if you choose this particular action here. You can ride, which means I could take 4 of these, up to 4 of these, and move them to any one parish. So I'm going to move them here. That's what I'm going to do for my action. Now, I could confiscate, and that is to find submissive parishes with henchmen and place a carriage, and I could have actually started that going. Unfortunately, when I do place a carriage, what I'm basically doing is taxing and levying against this particular region, and that makes them mad, and they will go into revolt. But I'll get my carriage here, and then I can follow it into town and try and get it to town so that I can get the bonus here, which in this case would be move towards order and a couple extra coins. So, and I get to choose these, and Robin Hood doesn't know at any given time what the carriages are composed of. So he might wind up finding a carriage that has a trap that brings with it some surprise henchmen to go along with it and take that risk. There we go. Yep. 2 henchmen. Ooh, yes. All right, and or disperse, which means that you can just take enemy pieces and move them to available. That's pretty powerful if you want to just get rid of some merry men. They don't go to jail; they just get dispersed. But sometimes you just need to disperse things. So anyway, so then we're done. So then we flip it back over here, and we flip the next card, and we go on again with the same choice, Guy of Gisborne. Now, as for Robin Hood, he can recruit, and he doesn't have to pay as much, 1 shilling per space, and then he can recruit where either place a merryman anywhere where there's a revolt going on, or he could replace one of these with a camp, and then, or if there is a camp, he can basically recruit 2 at a time instead of 1. He could also sneak, which is to basically take an origin place and then disperse the merriment to adjacent spaces. And as long as there's not too many henchmen and too many people coming in, they can stay hidden. Otherwise, they have to reveal. Or rob. Rob is pretty cool, and that's what we're going to do. Rob, you can pick up to 3 spaces, and it doesn't cost anything, which makes you go, well, why don't you just rob all the time? Well, because there's a risk. So you select a target, and you can select a carriage if there was one on the map. Say if there was one in this region, then the merry men could reveal themselves and attack the carriage. In this case, would that have been a good idea? Nah, there's a trap there. There's henchmen coming along with it, and then there's a phase where you have to roll the dice based on whether some place is owned by whether it's friendly to Robin Hood, you roll the green dice, which has a better odds for Robin Hood, or if it's not, if it's a regular area, you roll the lesser dice, and so you take the risk that your robbery might not actually succeed. So in this case, if we were to do that, that would be the end result. So anyway, robbing in general, though, you can also grab a traveler card. And the traveler card says, you look at this and you go, and Robin Hood decides and goes, okay, well, I can go for this top attempt, and this is safer. If you fail, it just goes in the discard pile. You just wasted your turn. But there's a 1 defense. So I'm going to reveal both of these, and guess what? One of them's probably Robin Hood himself. Robin Hood is a special merryman. He has a few extra things that he can do that other merrymen cannot. He's much more merrier. Or you can take a risk and try this lower attempt, and if you do that, then you're going to get an opportunity for an even greater reward. But failure usually means that something happens, like capturing Robin Hood or capturing or some other thing going on. So we're going to do that. We've decided we're going to rob here. We've grabbed this, and we're going to take, we're going to take this risk here and do the big bonus, because you have to choose beforehand. So we've got 2, and do the card. We roll a green die because we're in the forest, and that's 0. So basically our end result is we have 2 is our potency, our strength. If the number of revealed merrymen is plus the die result is greater than the target's defense number, which is 1, plus the number of henchmen in the space, which is 0, it's a success. So I succeeded by the narrowest of margins in this case. So what do I get out of it? Well, I'm going to get Robin Hood revealed adjacent to Nottingham, which I kind of already did, but I can move him over here, I guess, or move him here. And then gain 2 shillings from the sheriff which means now so it's not just from there. So now we've not just robbed from the rich, we've robbed from the really rich. And then shift one step towards justice and put this card in the victims pile. Aha, you're a victim. All right, look at that. We've done some good things for justice. So this is what goes on. And again, Robin Hood has his own set of deeds. They're pretty cool. He can turn a henchman into a merryman. He's good at that. He's very persuasive. He can donate to submissive parishes to set them to revolting, which is going to be bad for the sheriff if he doesn't handle that. Swashbuckling and inspire are things that Robin Hood can do to kind of motivate in ways that other merrymen could not. And that's basically the way the game goes. So you're going to pick a choice, do these things, plot, events, whatever. You're going to do these, and you're just going to keep cycling through these. At certain points, you're going to get again, and you'll see these carriages here. So if carriages were out, say here, and you had this card come up, then you'd move this even closer, which is you have to move them. So if you move them in, you risk the idea that this is going to be a potential for robbery. But you're trying to get money, and this is one of the main ways that the sheriff can get money. Plus, he's got the opportunity for some trap carriages, which is kind of cool. So, yeah. And then you're going to go, and then at a certain point, you're going to get a royal inspection. And then you conduct that and then continue on. Royal inspections have a series of things that you go through: unrest, mischief, governance. Trust me when I say that this is basically just handling a bunch of things that go on to sort of reset the board. It also does a check to see if anyone's over here or here for winning or losing. And you just do that 24 times, or 24 cards, I believe, is what we're at. And at the end of that, we're done. Again, quite a glossy overview. This does not cover a gameplay. However, there are several really thorough gameplays already available online, particularly several from the designer and the developer themselves, which more than aptly tell you what's going on. I'm just telling you a few of the things you can do and giving you just a taste of Robin Hood. So that's what we got. Let's get into my final thoughts on A Gest of Robin Hood. Okay, final thoughts on A Gest of Robin Hood. Let me adjust my glasses for a second, and then we'll begin. As always, we go into the pros, but first we go into the cons, and then we go into my final thoughts. As for the cons, if you're coming into this game from a coin or / irregular conflict series side of it perspective, understand that the simplified nature of the game and its place as sort of the adventure wing of the series does make it so that you won't get necessarily the intricate nuances of your typical coin game. Maybe not even quite the three, though, the one-on-one nature of its predecessor in the irregular conflict series. So from that perspective, now from a new player side of it, if you haven't seen it before and you just go, wow, cool art, Robin Hood, yay, understand that the draw of the adventure here, is still, even though it's the most adventurous of the series, it's still cerebrally subdued as far as that goes. So your zeal may need to be a bit tampered, in contrast to, say, other Robin Hood style games that you may have seen. And there are several. There's quite a few Robin Hood games that have come out that have a different sort of spin on it, but don't expect to fly through the trees like Errol Flynn, we'll put it that way. The other thing is this introduces a true hidden element. Now, all the coin games that I can think of so far, all of them have had some sort of a reveal hide mechanism where you either have, your unrevealed little wooden cubes representing something special, or then you flip them up and now they're revealed and they're easy. They're vulnerable to being captured or manipulated and such. That's always been in the coin series, but this one actually takes it a step further, because those just basically, create barrier. Everybody knows and sees all the information. You see that they're hidden. Oh, these are hidden. They're visibly hidden. Now we have an element where things are not visibly hidden. Now we know that things get changed up because you don't know one of those pieces is special. It's Robin Hood. It's special. And so it does make it an interesting dynamic, a new one, which we'll talk about in the pros. But it is a little bit awkward in that sometimes you're going to have to deal with hey, look away. I'm going to rearrange my pieces. And pick a card, any card. Oh, it's Robin. And so that's a little bit of an odd element. It's not. I mean, again, none of these cons are substantially, like grave in any regard. But that's something to just keep in mind that that's new. And the other thing about that, piggybacking on that, is that it's not solo friendly the way that every other coin ICS game has been. All of them have been friendly. Some of them even have gone to great lengths not only to have a solo mode, but over time to iterate and even present even better ways of playing solo with better bots and stuff. Even if it's in its infancy, this series has always been inclined to and amenable to solo play because of the lack of hidden information. This breaks that mold. Now, is that bad? No, but it is something to think about. When you're buying this, if you are used to that or make or leverage that solo element considerably. Someone's always going to find a way to make a solo variant. It's just the way it is. But the satisfaction here is in the cat and mouse of Robin Hood and the Merry Men versus the Henchmen. It's the nucleus of the experience, and so I personally wouldn't. I don't see that this is going to be amenable to solo play, at least for me. Now let's get into the pros. Now when it comes to the positive, there's a lot to ingest here. The map, the artwork, the box, everything is gorgeous. It is really, just the artwork continues to shine and excel, and this really evokes the idea of Robin Hood and adventure in every aspect of play. The map deserves a special call out. It really feels like you've got Sherwood, you've got your surrounding regions, you've got your Nottingham. They're all beautifully represented in vivid but not cluttered detail. I know there was some scuttlebutt recently that the prototype map had real locations and there was some sadness it was not kept, but honestly I couldn't dream of enjoying it as much with that much clutter. It would add nothing to the actual core gameplay experience that was trying to be created here. I love the ballad flow of the game. There's a very specific set of cards. There's a very specific cadence of how those cards play out. So you're not going to get these you're going to get some randomization in between the sandwich layers, but otherwise everything is anchored such that you can count on a certain cadence and flow of the game that doesn't detract at all. In fact, it adds. This is a two-player delight. It is very specifically two players, and it works very well. Previously, in the Coin series, there was Colonial Twilight, and it was the predecessor that I thought really nailed the two-player experience of Coin rather than 1, 3, and 4. This one is much more likely to hit the table due to the theme and the additional streamlining. It knocks it out of the park. I want to give a special call out to the rules, and then the learn to play, and then the playthrough. 3 different rule books or guides given to you, far richer of information than and elegantly presented terms than I would ever ask for a game of this simplicity and price point. And it over delivers greatly in reinforcing this joy and mystery and background and vibe of Robin Hood. So kudos for that. I really like the player aid approach where you have on the front of both players get a placard where they can place their units, and they have very good breakdown of all the things they can do. But then the backside gives you strategies and approaches straight away. It removes a lot of the indecision space that a coin game often creates when someone's newly trying to discover it. You flip it over and go, oh, okay, here are 3 different stances of play I can take, and here's what I'm generally going to want to try to do. Why not? That hurts nothing. It only appeals to people that are trying to really understand this game. Maybe this will be the on-ramp into more coin or irregular conflict series games for them. So really, really well done with the presentation. And I spoke of the solo being the lack of solo being a drawback, but honestly, I'm glad they didn't try to ramrod in a solo version of the game just because it is the way. No, the only thing I like better than a really good solo option in a game is the wherewithal to not put a solo option in when it's just not a clear fit. The asynchronous nature of the playstyles of the game also shines here. The asymmetry, not asynchronous, asymmetry nature of the game. Sheriff is I feel like he's got this button down and focus, keeping commerce flowing, and those pesky merrymen at bay with his crack troops. And then Robin is shifty and elusive with his merrymen and able to sway the masses at just the right time and venue and time, location, and disappear, reappear. Really love it. The simplified action system does not mean that the gameplay is simple, but they're both relevant. They're both valuable here. You can see the coin and the ICS roots there, but the plots and the deeds make it shiny. Little things, little touches like in some there in some games, some of the coin games, that you could mix and match timing of actions and special actions or whatever. Here it's very simple. Here are 4 things you can do. When you were done with those things, here are 3 things you can do if you've chosen the supercharged version of that. Great. Everything is in threes. Like, hey, you've got choose up to 3, choose up to 3, choose up to 3. You got that down. And then you pay your variable rates or whatever. There's a couple exceptions to that, but for the most part, they've got it so that it's so consistent with the actions, as opposed to some of the coin games. Sometimes you'd have these mental flow charts you'd have to go through, because each of these options could be different, and from game to game they could vary in ways that are subtle, but then they really change things. Here it keeps it simple. And that doesn't strip away any of the fun for me. It doesn't mean that I'm going to go, never play a distant plane again. I will. Because it fits that role, and it fits that really complicated interaction between 4 different factions of very different motivations. But here it just works and it fits. Here it just adds to the adventure rather than to the mental brute force thinking work here. You really feel like you're role-playing the sheriff or Robin because of these simple deeds and actions and the events. It's great. Especially Robin. You get these ingenious little deeds for Robin that really give that superhuman Errol Flynn vibe to his special deeds that he can perform. At the same time, having different ways to kind of for the merrymen and the other actions to be performed. So the risk reward here that started in Vinja in the previous India-based irregular conflict series is now fleshed out and honestly near perfected in Gest. Coin games generally don't have a surprise, I roll this and lost. They don't have that. Generally speaking, it's very procedural and very deliberate and known. Here you don't. You have these area-specific bonuses coupled with this intrinsic defense of things like the carriages or the travelers, and then you couple it with surprises like the carriage could have a trap that adds more. You don't know, Robin Hood. And then you have the die that, again, it's brilliant to have it 2 different dies based on whether you're in the forest or whether in one situation or another. You have a different die. One's better, one's worse. I mean, they could have just done, hey, if you're in this area, then add or remove this modifier. Instead, they went the whole way of adding these extra dice, which I think is great. And then you add all this up. It's really simple. You could do it in 7.2 seconds, and then you find out whether your risk actually gave a reward or not. Plus, you get to decide the level of risk. That's huge. That's great. Like, okay, one way or another, either this is going to work or it isn't going to work, and I'm going to get some coins out of it. Or I could go, for what's behind door number 2. Except if you lose, a guy comes out with a hatchet and chops your arms off. Something like that. You get this wonderful, exciting tension, which is what you'd expect when you're like, we're about to rob something. Is it going to work? Was there a trap set for me? It all adds up to a wealth of actual suspense that coin series games intrinsically rarely provide, given the full information approach that they historically offer. So, anyway, in final thoughts. A Gest of Robin Hood is truly the action-oriented arm of the Coin and ICS series. It cinematizes the experience the way its predecessors haven't come close to yet. It synthesizes the simple plot, indeed, and event system to perfection to me, to make you play a living, breathing story within the world of Robin and the Sheriff, couched in coin, in this coin mechanism terms, or ICS, it's regular conflict series terms. It's approachable and it's satisfying, probably the most satisfying game in the series yet for just feeling good about what you're doing or having fun. It's no replacement for the wider and broader real-world theaters of its predecessors, and it doesn't intend to be. I mean, to put it in dad joke terms, it's a game that for most of us, I'm sure, would create great merriment, that no one will feel hoodwinked into purchasing, that you might even enjoy, even if you're not Sheriff. The coin game system is universally right for you. I got a hunch, man, that this could be right up your alley. It's got a price point that won't cost you an arm and a leg. You can tuck it in between the other coin games on your shelf, and who among us wouldn't want to take a little jaunt down the memory lane of Robin Hood lore? It made Marion a believer and could easily charm you into it as well. For when danger reared its ugly head, Sir Robin bravely coined instead. Okay. Now this is the part where I was supposed to sing, I just called to say I love you. and I mean it from the bottom of my cart. But I won't. Instead, I'll just say this is a 10/10 in the series. It's awesome. I would recommend it. Enjoy it. I will too. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time on Harebrained Games.